All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle a huge topic, but we're going to look at it a little differently today. Instead of a discussion purely based on faith, we're putting on our philosophical hats to really break down the concept of God in Islam. Think of this less like a sermon and more like a structured outline, a way to see the core ideas that shape this entire worldview.
And this quote, it really sets the stage perfectly for our approach. This isn't your typical feel-good talk. Nope. This is really for the thinkers out there, whether you're Muslim or not, who genuinely want to get into the how and the why behind the beliefs, not just the emotional side of things. It's all about the intellectual framework.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around the Islamic concept of God, we have to start with one single foundational premise. It's kind of like the key that unlocks everything else.
And that big premise is this. At its absolute core, Islam is a communal religion. This isn't about some isolated individual spiritual journey. Instead, your personal relationship with God is meant to directly fuel and, improve how you engage with everyone else in your community. And trust me, this one idea, it shapes literally everything else we're about to talk about.
So let's get into the first major attribute of God, the Creator. Now that term might sound familiar, but in Islam, there's a really critical distinction that sets its concept of a creator way apart from many others. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On one hand, you've got this idea of the clockmaker God. You know, the deistic concept, where a creator builds the universe, winds it up like a clock, and then just steps back to watch. But the God of Islam? Totally different. This is an active God. He doesn't just create, he is constantly sustaining, nourishing, and renewing everything. He's intimately involved every single second of every single day.
And this leads to this really fascinating duality. God is described as this transcendent, all-powerful, supreme being who is completely beyond our comprehension. And yet, at the exact same time, he is described as being intensely personal, so close, closer to you than your jugular vein. So he's both completely majestic and right here with you.
Now, the big deal here isn't just that there's only one God, it's what that means for how we live and interact with each other. This concept of absolute divine unity, or tawhid, it has some really radical implications when it comes to justice.
And this is the heart of it. If there is only one God for every single person, then he's not some kind of tribal deity who picks a side. He doesn't just back you. The very same God you are praying to for help or for victory is the exact same God your opponent is praying to.
Which, of course, raises a huge question. When you and someone you're in a conflict with are both praying to the same God for justice, whose prayer gets answered? What happens when your prayers are literally against each other? It forces you to think.
And the answer, according to Islamic scripture, is that God doesn't side with a person. He sides with justice itself. He stands with the one who has been wronged. This makes being just in how you treat other people the most important spiritual act. Your relationship with God is directly reflected in how you treat others.
Now, since Islam came about 600 years after Christianity, a good chunk of its scripture is also spent clarifying its idea of God by pointing out what he is not. And this is aimed specifically at some of the doctrines that have become central to Christianity.
The Quran is incredibly clear on these points. It flat out states that God doesn't have children, that God was never born, and that he's not a father in any literal sense. The core idea is his absolute total uniqueness. There is nothing in all of creation that you can even begin to compare to the Creator. So, to address the Christian view of Jesus, the Quran makes this really interesting logical argument. It basically asks the question. It says, look, you already accept that God created Adam from nothing, with no parents at all, right? So if you can accept that, why is it so hard to accept that he created Jesus with one parent, but no father? The whole point is that for a God who is all-powerful, this kind of miraculous creation is simple. All he has to do is say be, and it happens.
So, how does this God reveal himself to humanity? What's interesting is you won't find one long chapter in the Quran that's just an abstract definition of God's attributes. Instead, his nature is revealed through a very different, very practical method.
God reveals himself through the messy, complicated stuff of real human life. His attributes, like justice, mercy, forgiveness, they're all shown in stories about business deals, family arguments, war, and health. The whole idea is, since we're not abstract beings, the best way for us to understand God's nature is within the real-world context of our own lives and our own struggles. And what you see through all these stories is a very balanced picture of God's temperament.
Mercy and compassion are, without a doubt, the dominant themes. Almost every single chapter of the Quran kicks off by invoking them. It's even said that his mercy eclipses his wrath. But that doesn't cancel out his justice, his demand for obedience, and his absolute accountability for our actions. It's a balance of deep, profound love and profound seriousness.
Which leaves us with a final thought, a really big question to chew on. If God is revealed not in some abstract textbook, but in our actual, everyday actions, in how we deal with justice, mercy, and even conflict, what does that really say about the true nature of faith? You have to wonder. Maybe it's suggesting that faith isn't just about what you believe in your head. Maybe it's much, much more about what you actually do in the world.